Good evening, YouTube. Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. So I was having questions on what I was going to do for today's video, but that was until the Storm Prediction Center came in and issued a day 6 slight risk. So that's what we're going to be covering today. This area is mainly going to be centered over the Ozarks region and the Mississippi River Valley. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it here. Oops. But this is what we have going on right now, and this is actually extended a little further than I thought. This also extends into some of the western parts of the Tennessee Valley. We'll have to keep an eye on that as well. So far, it's just a 15% area of severe weather, but an interesting note that was in the synopsis was the risk was highest for damaging winds and tornadoes around the Arklatex. So there's also some uncertainty for areas off to the east for Tuesday, so I'll be watching that as well. As of right now, I'm not expecting a whole lot out of it, but things can change pretty quickly, just like how quickly we got this day 6. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right into things and start looking at the models here. The model that's really been the hottest on this to me has been the Euro. The Euro's had a pretty stout storm system on this for a bit now. GFS has too, but the GFS kind of has a little bit of a different picture than the Euro. This is us looking at the Euro on the day of the 2nd into the 3rd, and you can see that this has slightly more zonal flow, and the storm system itself isn't super progressive. It's also got a neutral tilt to it as opposed to maybe a negative tilt. So with these neutral tilts, a lot can end up happening. I think there's going to be a little bit more limited instability due to the fact that there isn't going to be quite as much cold air funneling in behind there, and there's not a lot of warm air out ahead of it, although I do notice a slight increase from what I saw in the models the other day. So I think the further east we go starting out on the 2nd will be probably where the greatest severe weather risk will end up being. I'm thinking mainly around this corridor on the Mississippi River here, or on the eastern edge of the Ozarks as of right now. Of course, this may very well change given the fact that we are still 6 days out, but my confidence is, I'd say maybe a 3 out of 5, if anything. And then, of course, when we go into the 3rd, this storm system really tries to deepen a little bit. It does try to do a negative tilt, but it doesn't quite pan out. The storm system kind of just does its own little weird thing. We'll have to watch and see if this ends up producing some weather for the south. I do think for this area around the mid-Atlantic and the eastern Tennessee Valley, and for the mountains too, but I mainly think that this is going to be a little bit more benign by this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep an eye on that. Then we'll watch this slow try to become closed off, and maybe this will be another snow system for these guys up towards the northern Great Lakes here, something that you probably are tired of hearing at this point, but that's what we have going there. And then by the 4th, this system's out of here, and another one's coming in right behind it. And this one looks like it has a light to moderate cold blast coming in as well. And then from there, that's pretty much going to be the first week of January. We compare this picture to the GFS, though, it's a little bit different. So here's the evening of New Year's Day, and we'll watch this storm system move forward. Notice how much quicker it looks like it's moving, and then also you can see that that trough isn't quite as zonal. It's a little bit more progressive looking. It has a little bit more of a distorted wave here. This lends itself towards more of a linear type system. And this is where the damaging wind threat comes in a lot more so than the tornado threat. Because you can clearly see these little ISO bars. If you compare it to how the Euro looked, and we're going to jump back here towards the 2nd. Oops, if I can get it to work right. Oh, great. This is OOZ on the 3rd. You can see that it looks a little bit different. there's multiple modes. You can see that there's some potential for discrete right here, but you can also see linear right here, and this is because of the zonal flow of this trough. Right around here, it's a little bit more, the forcing's more subtle, whereas on the GFS, forcing's not quite as subtle. Forcing's a little bit more apparent. And that's what's going to often cause more of a linear type event more than a discrete event. We all know what discrete events usually end up meaning. So as time goes on, we'll watch this continue onward, and this pretty much maintains that linear type setup. And then from there, the look's pretty much the same after that. Shortwave pieces Vendry come through. It's a little bit more broken up on the GFS, if anything. But the cold air that comes in behind this will be a little less significant, if anything. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with there. Let's make our comparisons with the what the precip looks like. And this is where things will start to get will become a little bit more obvious to you. When I look at the vorticity map, it's mainly just me geeking out, to be honest. But in reality, a lot of us will go off of this map right here, and we'll get an idea through that as to what's going on. And you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. This is the euro that we're looking at, by the way. And this is the second. This is into the morning, the late morning into the early afternoon hours for some. And we can see here, we have these little clusters of storms here. Forcing is a little less aggressive on this. So as a result, we're going to end up seeing a different picture with this. There's lines of storms, there's line segments, but there's also a few discrete storms that are out ahead of those. Those are the ones that we will probably have to watch for the likelihood of maybe a few tornadoes. But other than that, we're mainly looking towards a linear threat which lends itself to damaging winds and some hail. And then we'll watch this progress off to the southeast, and then another system's going to come in behind it, bringing in its cold air. These are going to be relatively weak in nature, and that'll be that. If we compare this with the GFS, though, we'll jump this and with us jumping this forward, try to make sure I got my placement right here. Okay, this is looking into the morning of the evening of the first into the second. And look at that, vastly different. We have what looks to be almost like a singular line segment right here, maybe even a QLCS. Tornadoes can still be produced by this, but it's not going to be the same as the events that we saw with the Winter Storm Diaz, where areas like New Orleans and areas in southern Mississippi got hit with stronger tornadoes. Not to say that it still can't happen, but the GFS kind of paints a different picture here. Also, one other thing to keep in mind is that the Euro is a more high-res model than the GFS currently right now. Come on, Americans, we need you to work on that. Anyway, so we'll roll this forward, and this pretty much means it's maintained its linear shape, and we're stuck with the storm system throughout the week as we head towards Friday. It finally will start to clear out. So one thing that I'm interested in looking at right now is the CAPE values, because that's going to be a key factor in a lot of this. I'm suggesting that probably with the GFS, the CAPE value is going to be a little bit more rich versus the Euro, because usually with those higher CAPE values or proper upper level forcing is where you end up getting those lines of storms. But that's more so during the summertime. The wintertime can be a different can of worms, so to speak. It's a little bit trickier to hone in on that. But that being said, even so, I probably would expect that to all add up regardless. And it still looks like we get sufficient CAPE on the second, but not quite as in the abundance that you would expect for a typical severe weather event. We do look like we get up to about 1,000 joules plus, about 1,500, which is about where I would expect it to be for this setup here. But this CAPE doesn't really, the really juicy CAPE here usually is going to stay offshore in situations like this. And then, of course, as this progresses further east, it kind of wanes, and that's pretty much that for the severe threat. One thing that kind of peeves me with this setup too also is the fact that uh, GFS only goes off of surface based cape. I like going by mixed layer because it allows you to see the whole entire cape values within all levels of the atmosphere, and it's usually a more accurate depiction of what we're dealing with, whereas we can only look at what's on the surface, hence the name surface based cape. So we're gonna go ahead and use it though, and we're gonna skip all the way up to about 00Z or 21Z, actually depends on what the computer wants to do. Cape values are still pretty sufficient, about 1,000 to 1,500 joules, but this cape moves in and out way quicker, and we'll still have to watch towards the coast, but the GFS looks like it's trying to be more aggressive with this as well. Again, like I said, I'd rather be able to see the mix layer, but we don't have any other models that are within range to look at for comparison, and we're still too far out to just look at one model. So that being said, there's a lot still up in the air with this system as to what kind of mode these storms will be in. For the most part, I think we'll get a pretty good balance of both. I think the tornado threat will exist earlier in the day, and then we'll transition into a damaging wind event. That seems to be the look of this system from both models, or at least from what I've gathered. Of course, we'll be keeping track of this leading up to the event, so stay tuned for further updates. But that's pretty much all I got for you guys on this video here. If you enjoyed it, definitely drop me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I've been mentioning it in the last few videos, especially with the major jump in viewership and subscribers too, which I also want to thank you guys for. Still, there's 87% of people that watch my videos that are not subscribed. So if you enjoy these updates, if you find them useful, hit that subscribe button. And tell your friends too. I'm also trying to help get this information out to the people that may need it. So that being said, also let me know in the comments if you're in an area of interest for severe weather. What do you think the risk is going to be for your area? What do you think the timing is going to be for your storm system, even though I haven't gone over it just yet? Or if you want to know, just ask me in the comments. But anyway, enough rambling from me. There's still a lot of other things I got to cover today, not just with this channel, but other modes of business. So I'll bid you farewell here. This has been Ty, Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. Have a good night.